So for starters, with a good oil filter, a couple of the things you're going to consider and that we can look at with this breakdown and this cut open would be number one, the threads to mount the filter. Typically you'll find that all oil filters will be pretty similar. In this instance, comparing our Napa Gold, the new Napa Gold, to the previous Napa Gold, you will find that there are more threads, substantially more threads you'll see there on our new Napa Gold. Even the Proformer series filter you'll see has tremendously more threads than our original Napa Gold made by Mann Hummel. And just for full transparency, that is the Mann Hummel produced Napa Gold, whereas this is just our basic Proformer, in fact. So even the threads on the Proformer, our Proformer series, have really increased in quality. We never really had a problem with threads, but that's the first thing we would look at. Second thing, the red high temperature silicone sealing gasket. Previously they were black or bubblegum colored. The bubblegum color is going to be a fine basic nitrile based rubber. The new one is going to be tremendously thicker, a little bit more pliable, but at the end of the day, just a different construction. You'll see that this is actually going to integrate with that and allow for that to properly seal. Actually, it's going to flip over on that one. That will properly seal in the case, so that way you can have no blow-by or no oil escaping through those passages while it's going through. So at the end of the day, the threads, even on the AC Delco one, are very comparable rather to our Proformer and our Napa Gold current supplier. The filter media has been increased on our Napa Gold versus the previous Napa Gold. They are both exactly 30 micron, but what you will find is the pleat is not very uniform on some of our existing Mann Hummels, whereas it looks like the new Napa Golds are, I mean, almost to a T perfect. I did actually ask both the Mann Hummel rep and the new supplier filter manufacturer of the glue. When they have glue in the bottom of it or phenolic resin, does that affect the filter? And they said as long as it's not covering the filter area or the surface area, it's not decreasing the flow rate, nor is it causing any type of fitment issue. So the glue is not necessarily a huge concern. I asked because also on this one, the AC Delco filter wasn't centered in their metal housing. Not a huge deal, to be honest, as I was asking. None of the reps really said, hey, that's going to cause a failure, but something to consider and keep in mind. Also the actual cellulose synthetic blend glass technology that they use for the high demands and the high vehicle temperatures that we're pushing these oils at, they will provide peace of mind. And if you actually look at the filter, it's very similar to the previous supplier. PGI does a really great job with their filters, and then Proformer is actually going to be a different supplier as well. I don't have that readily available, but I will say out of all the medias, the AC Delco one seems to be the least consistent. It almost seemed like that was open and not sealed, but maybe that's just where they glued it down the seam. But the quality, I mean, you can look at and see. Another thing with that is the inside of this where the oil will go through. That coil inside there is metal on most filters, but you'll find on the AC Delco one, it's plastic. That typically won't be an issue unless you have a fully plugged filter, and at that point you hope that the overpressurization valve, check valve goes. But at the end of the day, they have used metal coil springs underneath those to hold that anti-drain back valve in. So you'll find that the coil springs used on the old Napa Gold, Mann Hummel, and the new Napa Gold are pretty similar. However, both very stout. This one, I would say the new Napa Gold from PGI is going to be oversized per se. It's going to have the right tension on it, but that's not here nor there because it applies even pressure with the circular approach they have. A lot of people historically in different companies have used different methodologies. The leaflet spring is not one that I typically would want used, but is definitely a possibility. Also allows for that pressure, over pressurization valve to be utilized there as well. But the AC Delco is the only one out of that series to utilize that style technology. Last but not least, one of the things to look at would be the thickness of the housing, the case. So our proformer is thicker than the AC Delco by about 25%. This is the brand new Napa Gold. That is exceptionally thick compared to the very thin and very pliable Mann Hummel Napa Gold that we previously had. At the end of the day, that will provide better resistance against abrasion. That's not hugely considered a concern. What is if you happen to tighten that filter down a little too hard, and you use a filter wrench to get it off. On the older filters, they would crush potentially, whereas the new 30% heavier and 50% thicker casing of the 7060 of the Napa Gold will actually withstand that extra force needed to get that off if it's stuck on. So those are a couple things that we've seen as far as changes and differences across the board. I will slowly kind of run through and just show the neat technology or the visual differences. That's pretty thick there. That housing is pretty basic on that filter. Drain back valve is a decent rubber, it feels like. Overpressurization valve is it's decent. There's not really good surface area in there, so I'm not a huge fan of that filter particularly, but they sell it as one of their premium filters. So proformer line, not made by PGI. Threads are good seal there. What's unique is that has a neck. This uses a metal neck in there, and this uses a piece of rubber to bridge the gap where that neck would be. So there's some different design on this. This is the only filter on the table, the proformer, that is not a 30 micron specification. The Napa Golds have always been made to the same specification, OE. Those are going to be 30 microns for the 7060 filter, 30 microns for the AC Delco PF48, and 25 microns on the 27060 MP Proformer filter. I will say that the Proformer filter is good for regular oil intervals, whereas the efficiency and the quality on the Napa Golds are going to allow for a little longer interval for some of these vehicles that call for longer intervals, as well as people that maybe have a little negligence on their time scale of when to change, something to consider. But Napa Gold, premium filter, housing looks good. The size of all of them are rather similar. The Proformer's the largest. These two, the difference between that, this has an OE surface area, whereas this is an increased surface area. You may say, how in the world can you do that with a smaller filter? They have a thicker pleat, larger M pleat in there, which allows for a larger surface area. The technology that they're using to make a one-piece filter has been a problem solver for several customers that have had issues, and we find that it provides a peace of mind. Really, I don't see Napa Gold going the wrong direction in any way, shape, or form, but I've got to say, after looking over and comparing every one of these filters, I am confident with the Napa Gold, the direction they're going with PGI. They're single sourcing them, so you're not going to see different country of origin every single time. Another thing, every one of our Napa Gold filters are going to have that red seal. Even the cartridge filters that you have, the O-ring seals that come with those will be red as well. Just for giggles, I wanted to pull out Wicks versus a Napa Gold, since that's what everybody likes to use as the gold standard. This was actually purchased off the shelf of a competitor in Shelton, Washington. So just as to the luck of the draw, which one we got whatever was on the shelf. On our Napa Gold 7502, we find that fits a lot of the law enforcement Explorers, Escapes, Ford Flexes, Fusions, Mustangs, the Interceptors, the Transits. There's just a lot that it fits. So at the end of the day, let's get down to brass tacks and take a peek at what we got. So as far as filter housing, filter itself, this is exceptionally thin. This is substantially thicker and more stout. So the thickness alone, leaflet spring. That is lesser quality in my opinion, and according to a lot of the national review companies that are independent of these manufacturers, this is a lesser quality than the spring. Cartridge itself, I will say they are exceptionally similar. Both have similar medias. I will say that this, the Wix one has the seal that's a little bit unique on where they reseal the two together when they make their filter media. There is some glue coming out on both of them, but nothing tremendous or terrible. This one does have the circular holes in there, which is, they stamped it with circle, but really they just open it up just big enough to allow that oil to go through, whereas we have the full flow open design. This does have an increased 15% surface area over our old Napa Gold, which was equivalent to and was essentially that filter. This is a decent little oil anti-drain back valve filter, but what I will say is you can physically see the substantial difference in thickness. It's not even a comparison. You've got a couple millimeters versus paper thin almost. So that is literally a Wix, no questions asked. It is a new GPC, Genuine Parts Company supplied filter. Yeah, we got the O-ring seal, or the flat cut seal there is super quality, sticks out quite a ways. I'd say whatever your concerns are, if they're particular, take them up with the rep or with us. But at the end of the day, I full-heartedly trust the Napa Gold name after looking over all the changeovers, being very analytical, testing different theories and problems and things. At the end of the day, I feel extremely confident knowing that that Napa Gold is something I can go out and sell, not have to worry about it, not have to question it. They are a problem solver line, the PGI, so Premium Guard Incorporated. They make everything to the specification of Napa, so really Napa is the governing factor of the quality. It just so happens that PGI can back it. So any other questions, reach out to your local Napa rep, but at the end of the day, hopefully this was some clarity and some transparency on the different filters. The last but not least, how do we know if we got a new filter or an old filter? Three things. One, the box that you get will say distributed by either Mann Hummel or distributed by Genuine Parts Company. Number one. Number two, the filter itself will say either Mann Hummel if it's got Mann Hummel on it, which we would have an example right here, Mann Hummel, or if it doesn't, it will say Napa Gold on it, and it will just be Napa Gold, the original. It's also going to be the thicker housing. Last but not least, the easiest identifier is going to be the red seal. You can see the old bubblegum seal from the old Wix, whereas every one of our new filters will have the new red seal on the Napa Golds. There's one last thing that you can look as an identifier. It is the font in which the Napa filter is written, the number, the 7502 or the 7060, for example. The font of it, you will notice, will be slightly different. But those are the overt feature differences and factors, and hope that you find this beneficial and that I didn't waste your time.